This ain't rap, it's blood sport. Your life cut short, you fell short. The pressure's on high, full court.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to yet another college football video, man. What what a day. What a set of games that was for the college football playoff. Man. I don't even know what to say, really. It was amazing. Was it as good as last year's? No. But last year I feel like was a little, unrealistically amazing in terms of Michigan versus TCU instant classic, Georgia versus Ohio State instant classic. We weren't getting that again, but the games we did got, I was appreciative of it because there was some damn good football. Let's get right into it, man. We're just going to be reviewing both of the games and then taking a look at a bit of a preview of the national championship and what I think could and will happen in that game. Starting off, man, let's go with the first game. Ignore all these advertisements. I'm not getting paid by any of these people. Alabama versus Michigan. Going into this game, I did pick Alabama. I thought that Alabama was a more physical team. I did not think Michigan would be able to rely on their normal. I didn't think Michigan style would get them the win versus Alabama. I thought Michigan would have to go above and beyond what they normally do, but that wasn't the case because Michigan, this game, was the more physical team. They were the more disciplined team. They were the more sound team in the run game. And even though Michigan made more than enough mistakes on special teams to lose this game, Alabama was not able to threaten Michigan through the air, and they were not able to take advantage of Michigan's mistakes. Let's get right into the stats right here. Taking a look first off, should we get into the stats? Should we get into the play-by-play? Let's do the play-by-play. Let's go possession by possession. What happened in this game? So starting off, oh my goodness, first play of the game, McCarthy throws what I thought was an interception, and you could argue should have been an interception. Some people, what the fuck is that? Some people thought that dude's foot was not out of bounds. It should have been ruled a interception. I'm not sure about that. It did look like dude had a foot out of bounds before he went and made the pick. So good job by the refs there. But man, Michigan nearly turns it over on the very first play of the game. Bad, horrible decision by J.J. McCarthy. And it looks like his confidence is shot. And it looks like Alabama has the early momentum then. So each team gets a stop, three and out. But then Michigan, their first special teams mistake of the game, fumbles, muffs the snap or muffs the punt. Alabama gets it back, scores a touchdown. But Michigan is able to answer with a touchdown of their own. They run the ball incredibly well. Blake Corum, I mean, is he just the hero of this season for Michigan or what? I mean, running, he had a 20 plus yard run this possession. They convert a fourth down through Blake Corum, and then he catches a little dump off pass from J.J. McCarthy, takes it to the end zone, touchdown. Michigan ties the game. Then both defenses go back and forth, not allowing anything by the opposition. And this is where we start to see Alabama's offensive line, which I've been saying all year has just been a tragedy in pass protection. They start to show themselves, and they could not keep Jalen Milroe upright. He did not have enough time to do anything through the air, and they couldn't really run the ball either. Jason McClellan, he had a solid game, but besides him, Milroe used his legs effectively, but Alabama, due to multiple bad snaps by their center, who already entered the transfer portal, I'm sure Nick Saban just kicked his ass off the team. He played a horrible game, but they just offensive line played horribly this game, and it did not allow Alabama to get any momentum really. Because of that, Michigan comes back, scores another touchdown. Alabama drives down, scores a field goal. First half, Michigan is able to rebound incredibly well off a near interception on the first play and a muffed punt and go into halftime with the lead. In the second half, more of the same. Both defenses each get force multiple punts to start the second half. Then Alabama drives down, scores a touchdown. Then Alabama, due to a horrible Jalen Milroe fumble, gives Michigan a chance to cut the lead to one. They miss the field goal, their second special teams error of the game. And then Alabama extends the lead to seven. Michigan drives down. This was the possession really. Michigan drives down a 5-minute drive, 75 yards, to tie the game. This was really impressive. They convert a 4th and 2, go 27 yards on that 4th and 2. Of course, Blake Corum. Who else? Then they force a stop on Alabama, and then the third special teams error. The return man muffs the punt again, gets to the ball at their 1. They nearly get a safety to lose the game, but they sneak into overtime, and in overtime, Blake Corum yet again. Yet again, Blake Corum. They feed him. Only takes 2 plays. Blake Corum, 25 yards, gets the touchdown. Then it goes back to Alabama, and it looks like they're driving, and it looks like they're going to be able to answer. But they get stopped. And on 4th down, the play to tie the game, force double OT, they call a QB draw on with behind an offensive line who has just gotten dominated all night long. They call a QB draw. It was a horrible play call. Everybody is ragging on the play call. They're making fun of the coordinator, Tommy Reese, I think is his name, whatever it is. It was a horrible play call. I mean, nothing more to say about that. So Michigan ends up winning this game. Looking at the stats in terms of who really did what for each team, again, Alabama was not able to throw the ball whatsoever. You could say J.J. McCarthy had a better game. I mean, statistically, it's not even close, right? But I would still argue that he had everything going for him. J.J. McCarthy, Michigan was able to do exactly what they've been doing. The Ohio State game, the Penn State game, they survived the Maryland game, beat Iowa. Michigan, they don't need McCarthy to do anything. They just need McCarthy to not put the ball in harm's way like he did last year against TCU. He's a game manager at this point, and when you're able to run the ball as well as they were, when you're able to just dump it off to Blake Corum, and he has 35 receiving yards, Blake Corum has well over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns this game, you don't need the quarterback to do much. And he had a solid game, but it was a lot of run after catch. It was a lot of dumping the ball off to Blake Corum and others. He did not stretch the field whatsoever, but they didn't need him to. That's my point. Alabama, on the other hand, could not keep Jalen Milroe upright all game long. He was running for his life. They ended up running for 172 yards, but when they needed the big play downfield, they couldn't find it. When they just needed some consistency from the O-line, it was a bad snap. It was something, man. Man. It was all the problems. They didn't have a number 1 receiver to beat Will Johnson and Mike Sanders still and all that. All the problems that Alabama showed during the season came back to haunt them in this game, offensively at least. And it's so strange because that game against Georgia, it really looked like that was the best possible version of Alabama you were going to see. And I'm not trying to say that that was like Alabama's national championship, like that was their game, but I think the players knew, Nick Saban knew that that Georgia game was the biggest game they had played up to that point since the national championship they lost to Georgia. You can't tell me that that game against Georgia wasn't more important to them in any game they've played this season or last season. So they came out, and credit to Nick Saban and all the coaching staff, they got 110% out of those players that game against Georgia. And myself, along with a lot of other people, took that as the version of Alabama we were going to see in this game, which I think is irresponsible. And I think I was not able to see that that was the best version of Alabama, and it was going to be extremely hard to replicate that performance. And all the cracks in their armor popped out this game, and they couldn't get anything going offensively against Michigan unless it was short field or something like that. Michigan ended up getting, was it 6 sacks on Jalen Milroe. Alabama defensively, I think they did a good job. I mean, if you allow 20 points in regulation, right, you should win that game. I just point blank. I feel like you should win that game in a playoff game too. Like 20 points historically, these playoff games are very, very high scoring. So if you allow 20 points in regulation, you do your job as a defense, right? Did they give up a lot of big plays in the second half to Blake Corum and stuff like that? Yes, they did. But I mean, this is a good Michigan team with a good O-line and a great running back. So you're going to give up big plays every now and then, but I feel like the defense did their job. But Tommy Reese, OC, a lack of talent at wide receiver and a bad O-line really was the death of Alabama this game. Jalen Milroe, I feel like he's a really good player. I think he did all he could. I'm going to highlight it more in the offseason video about Alabama, but I think Jalen Milroe, if they get some transfer receivers in there and a better O-line, I feel like he could easily win the Heisman next season. But it wasn't his night, was not Alabama's night. A good win for Michigan. I mean, their biggest win in program history, not program history, but in the last, 10 years, something like that. I mean, Obviously, the Ohio State games, those wins are huge and important for them, but they finally broke through. This is their chance to win their national championship. So good on them for getting past Alabama. Moving on to the better game, the more exciting game, the shootout. This felt like a playoff game. I'll put it that way. This was an amazing game. Everybody knew it going in. What happened in this game? I don't even have to go with the play-by-play. I feel like Texas. Well, let's do the play-by-play. I should go quicker than I did for Alabama and Michigan. Washington did exactly what they did against Oregon both games. And keep in mind, Oregon's a top 6, 7 team in the country, and Washington beat Oregon both times with a score damn near identical to this. All 3 times that Washington has played a top 10 opponent, they have won by 3 or more points while giving up 30 but scoring less than 40. It's kind of insane. This is how Washington wins big games. And let me just put it like this. Before Washington's defense, the defense that everybody was saying could not stop Texas, they forced 5 punts, 2 fumbles, and a turnover on down. Say what you want, but Washington's defense gets an A- from me this game. Gets an A- from me because they have played one of possibly the best statistical offense in the country against Oregon. They held them in the low 30s both times. They played an offense in Texas that everybody was saying would put up 40 plus on them. They hold them at 31. Washington's defense is incredibly underrated, and they did their job this game. But Washington's offense in the first half was lights out. It was just lights out. You had this turnover on downs down here, uh, which I mean, they went what 61 yards on that drive. But to open the game, it was Jalen Polk, 70 plus yards. Michael Penix was electric. I think Michael Penix had 300 yards at halftime. I think it was like 330 or something like that. Texas, we knew their secondary couldn't stop Washington, but they couldn't slow down Washington offensively. It was whatever Washington and Michael Penix wanted, they took downfield. Now in the second half, so they went into halftime 21-21. The third quarter was all Washington. They come out, touchdown immediately. They force a fumble on Texas. They score a field goal off of that. They force a punt off Texas. They take a field goal off of that. They force another fumble. So look at this third quarter. They just absolutely dominate Texas. And in the fourth, Washington lets their foot off the gas. I think a couple of these 4 straight possessions right here. Or you can call it 5 straight possessions. Field goal, punt, field goal, punt. You would like to turn a couple of these into touchdowns. I feel like Washington was settling in the late second half and the fourth quarter primarily. They were just trying to hang on to the lead. They were playing not to lose, which almost we're going to get into. I'm going to go on a rant right here. So Washington's dominating the whole time offensively, but their touchdowns turn into field goals, which gives Texas a slight opportunity. And they started off here with this touchdown right here, and then they take a field goal, cut the lead. I thought after Washington made this field goal right here, after they made this field goal to make it 2 possessions, I thought the game was over. I thought the game was effectively over. 2 minutes and 40 seconds, right? 2 minutes 40 seconds, you're up 2 possessions. How do they even have a chance to lose this game? Well, they gave up a 90-second drive where Texas takes a field goal. They did well at the end there. They did very well defensively, did Washington, to not allow Texas to get into the end zone. They forced a field goal there. Now, they do not Texas does not recover the onside kick. So then I'm like, oh, it's absolutely over now. All Washington has to do here is take 3 knees and Texas gets the ball back with 10 seconds. Instead, let's break down what Washington does here. They run the ball for 2 yards. Okay, fine, whatever. Texas takes their timeout. They run the ball again with their starting star running back, mind you. They don't put their RB3 in the game. They don't put their RB2 in the game. And I understand the argument that you want to put your most trusted guy in there so he doesn't fumble the ball or something like that. I get that. But you don't run the ball at all here, in my opinion. You just take knees. So run the ball, Texas timeout. Run the ball, Texas timeout. They run the ball again. Okay. And what happens here is that after they run the ball right here, their star running back, Dylan Johnson, gets hurt. Hurt badly. Injury timeout called on Washington. So it stops the clock, and you also lose your star running back to a potential season-ending injury. I have not heard any updates about that injury. I hope he's okay. I really hope he's okay. But that is one of the worst play calls all season by any team, and I like Washington. I am rooting for Washington heavily in this game and also in the national championship. But this was a horrible coaching decision to not only run the ball instead of just kneeling the ball, but also to run the ball with your star running back. And this is literally the worst possible scenario for Washington. You stop the clock with an injury timeout, but your star running back gets hurt in the process. So instead of just kneeling the ball, and you probably would have taken a delay of game, or you would have called a timeout on yourself. Texas would have had about 10 seconds after the punt here to go 75 yards, whatever it is, to score a touchdown. No chance, right? No chance. Instead, they have 50 seconds. And on the punt, Washington should be able to pin Texas within their own 10. It was a bad punt. It was from midfield. They punt the ball to about the 15, Texas 16 right here, right? And they interfere with the punt returner. They interfere. So not only should you have pinned Texas within their own 10-yard line with 10 seconds left, Texas now has the ball at their own 31 with 45 seconds. This was a disaster for Washington in terms of clock management, coaching, special teams, everything. So Texas now has life out of nowhere. They have a chance to go and win this game. And let me be very clear here. Washington should have lost this game. This was possibly the worst managed sequence I've seen all season. All season. This was a horrible job done by Washington in this last minute of this game. So Texas gets the ball. First play, Quinn Ewers incompletion. Second play, Quinn Ewers incompletion. Third play, they convert a bomb down the right side to Jordan Whittington with, I mean, they needed it. They needed it, and they got it. A bomb. And this one, I honestly thought the game was over. I thought Texas was about to drive down the field and win the game after they completed this bomb to Jordan Whittington. Now, inside Washington's 30, we get some pretty bad play calling by Texas, to be honest with you. Quinn Ewers incompletion to AD Mitchell. Washington takes a timeout because they're like, what the fuck is happening right now? Then Quinn Ewers, a 16-yard completion to Jaden Blue to get down to Washington's 12. Keep in mind, at this point, they have 2 first-round pick receivers on the field. They have a second-round pick tight end out on the field. I'm figuring, they're just going to take, all it needs is one shot into the end zone. AD Mitchell comes down with it. Game's over. So Quinn Ewers' first play is a dump off to Jaden Blue, which I thought was just a horrible play call. A dump off to Jaden Blue out of bounds. It takes about 5 seconds and you lose a yard. That was a horrible play call. Then Quinn Ewers throws it up the first time to AD Mitchell, incomplete. Quinn Ewers, another incompletion. Now 4th and 11. 1 second on this 3rd and 11, by the way. I thought the game was over here. I thought the time had run out. Quinn Ewers took a little bit too much time, but they reviewed, found 1 second was left on the clock. So now 4th and 11, game on the line in the college football playoff semifinal. AD Mitchell on the right side, throw it up to him one-on-one. Not the best throw. He puts it up where the defender can get his hands on it. Defender breaks it up. Textbook, amazing defense by that cornerback. Breaks it up to AD Mitchell. Game over. Washington escapes with a victory. And let me be very, very clear here. I know for a fact Washington's head coach took the biggest sigh of relief after they broke up that play, because if Texas would have won this game, that would have been the worst, even worse than Cristobal against Georgia Tech, because that was a random ass ACC game. This was the national championship on the line. That was one of the worst coaching, I don't even know what to call it, of all season. And they are very lucky to win this game. Looking at the final stats here. Obviously, Michael Penix, you could argue this was his best game of the season. I wouldn't really argue with you. Against one of the best defenses they played. Now, Texas's front 7 is a lot better than their secondary. Their secondary is not very good. And the front 7 was pretty solid, but they didn't get any pressure on Michael Penix because Washington has the best offensive line in the country, without question. Michael Penix outplayed Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers, and I'm not trying to I don't even know what to call it, but I'm not trying to pile on him right now. But this was not his best game. Point blank. Quinn Ewers is a young player. He's a young quarterback. He's only started because he missed time this season and last season. He obviously didn't play at all against Ohio State. Quinn Ewers only has, guys, like 20 games under his belt, maybe less than that. So Quinn Ewers is an extremely young quarterback. So I'm not trying to say like Quinn Ewers should be this Heisman world beater. And I thought he played fine. I thought he played well enough to win this game. Not because Texas necessarily played well enough, but because Washington gave them an opportunity. But he had 19 incompletions. That's a lot. That's a lot for a quarterback. Texas ran the ball pretty well But the problem is that they were down so much and so often, especially in the second half, that they kind of had to abandon the run game at times. I thought Baxter played well, Jane Blue played well. Ewers used his legs this game. They ran the ball very well against Washington. That's kind of the issue with Washington. They have a really good secondary, I would say, but their front seven, as far as the run defense, is not up to par, I would say. Washington, on the other hand, this is Washington's thing. Dylan Johnson, he's not an All-American, nothing like that. Michael Penix using his legs was a a revelation in the Pac-12 championship against Oregon, and they did that again. A lot of plays they needed. Michael Penix got out of the pocket, used his legs to pick up those first downs. Those were massive, 31 yards by Michael Penix there, but they got over 100 yards. If Washington runs the ball for over 100 yards, it's just so hard to stop them. It's just so hard to stop them. It's just because they're going to throw it for well over 300. So if they get 100 yards on the ground, if they get some of those hard third and shorts, fourth and shorts, if Michael Penix is using his legs, it really just makes this offense unstoppable. Um, Without Dylan Johnson, though, that becomes very, very tricky. Romo, Dunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, they all came to play. I mean, when Washington has all three of their guys, they're just impossible to stop. Odunze and Polk, both over 120 yards. Uh, I mean, and there's a thing. They had Odunze, Polk, and McMillan. Texas had Sanders, Worthy, and A.D. Mitchell. And Washington blew them out the water. It wasn't even close. Look at the comparisons right now. Look at the comparisons. Washington's tight end had more yards than Xavier Worthy or A.D. Mitchell. I mean, it was Washington's tight end. Their running backs got a lot of yards. Washington does an amazing job at shutting down their opponent's number one receiver. Against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, they absolutely shut down Troy Franklin. He wasn't even a factor in that game. In this game, they shut down A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, you could say. Now, A.D. Mitchell had a touchdown, but he had how many he had like 10 targets this game. Only had four catches of 32 yards. And then Washington defensively, like I said, I mean they made all the plays they need. They had two fumbles, they had two sacks. Braylon Trice picked a really good time to have his best game of the season. He had two massive sacks against Quinn Ewers, and Texas could not get after Michael Penix. They had 0 sacks. They had 0 sacks on the day. Um, any final thoughts about this game? I think Washington showed up. They let their foot off the gas in the second half. Horribly managed their final possession. Gave Texas way too much time. Horrible field position, all that. But that's kind of a fluky situation, I feel like. So they managed to win this game. And shout out to Texas. Great season for them. Washington moves on. So let's talk about now what I think is going to happen in the national championship. Michigan versus Washington. It's going to be a great game. Honestly, I feel like it's going to be a really, really good game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like we saw last year. Um, I think it's going to be more like Georgia versus Bama 2 years ago. Let's just get into it, man. Starting off with Michigan. Obviously, they don't have like any you can't even compare JJ McCarthy to Michael Penix, obviously. But just looking at it, I think honestly, I think Michigan almost has to play this game like they did against Penn State. Not because Washington is a world-beating defense and they can't pass because they're afraid of McCarthy going down every other play, but because I feel like if you want to win this game, you have to dominate Washington in terms of time of possession, right? You have to limit Washington's possessions because we know this with Michigan. Michigan's not winning a shootout. In the four games they played against good teams, right? Maryland, Penn State, Ohio State. You can throw Iowa in there if you want, but Iowa, Alabama. The most they've scored out against any of those teams is like 31, I think, against Maryland. So they're not scoring 40 plus. Like if you want to beat Washington and playing Washington style, you have to score 40. Nobody's been able to do it yet. I think USC scored 40, but Washington scored 50. So you can't get into a shootout and win with Washington, especially when they have Jalen McMillan, especially when they're fully healthy. It's just too difficult. So Michigan has to make Washington play their style of football. I don't really think you can, but Michigan cannot get out of their style. They can't get out of what they do best. They have to run the football for 250 plus yards against Washington. They just have to. It's their only hope. Can they do that? I think so. They've struggled to do that against the Penn States, against the Alabamas, against the Ohio States, against the Marylands, against the Iowas. They haven't. When was the last time they ran for 200 plus yards? I don't know. but that's what they're going to have to do. Donovan Edwards has had a very bad season, just a very bad season compared to what he did last year. They need him to step up massively. They need to use McCarthy's legs in the run game. They need Alex Orji to come in there and actually be useful for them this season or this game. Sorry, and they need Blake Corum. I mean, he's been. I mean, just look at the stats. Blake Corum has 26 fucking touchdowns on the year. He has 26 touchdowns. He has over close to 1,300 yards, I think. They need Blake Corum's best game. I mean, they're going to need 150 plus yards from scrimmage, 2 or 3 touchdowns, probably 3. Like they, I feel like people are favoring Michigan from what I've seen so far. I feel like Michigan needs to play better at their style than Washington. I feel like Washington can play at 90% and win this game. I don't feel like Michigan can play at 90%. I don't feel because against Alabama, with all those mistakes they made on special teams, if Michigan turns it over, they're fucked. They're fucked. You can't give Washington short field. You can't miss field goals. You have to play at 100+% if you're Michigan to win this game. And I don't think Washington has to do that. I think Washington can play at 90%, score 30 points, 31 points. I think they can win this game. What Michigan has to do is limit Washington to a lot less possession. I mean, they had what 15 possessions against Texas? They're Texas, something crazy like that. Michigan needs to dominate time of possession and defensively. Can they get after Michael Penix? I would have said before the Alabama game that Texas had a better D line in front seven and a better pass rush than Michigan. Michigan sacked Milroe 6 times. Washington's offensive line is significantly better than Alabama's. Washington is going to drop back and pass a lot more than Alabama, so they're going to have more opportunities to get after Penix. I do think they'll get after him. I think they'll bring him down 1, 2, maybe 3 times. Can they get a strip sack? That would be massive. Can you get a turnover? If they so Michigan has to force at least 1 turnover, optimally 2, because they're liable to do some stupid shit on special teams. So for Michigan to win this game, you have to run for at least 200, preferably 250 plus rushing yards. You have to run for an incredible amount of yards. You have to not turn it over yourself, and you need to force at least 2 turnovers from Washington. That's a lot to ask. That's a lot to ask. I think they can do it. I don't think they will do it, though. I just don't think Michigan has it in them. They don't have a number 1 receiver. They can't win a shootout. I don't think McCarthy is going to be able to move the ball downfield against this Washington secondary, against Jabbar Mohabed. I just think Washington has all the advantages in this game. People think that Michigan is going to just dominate them physically, when in reality, Washington dominated Oregon and Texas physically. That's what I don't understand. So Michigan's done it against what, Alabama? And I just think Washington has all the advantages here, even without Dylan Johnson. That's massive, okay? Because if Washington is not able to run for 100 plus yards, and I don't think they will. I don't think Washington's running for 100 plus against Michigan. I think that's just too hard to do. I think Michigan's too physical in the center of their defensive line and with their linebackers and with their defensive ends. I just think it's too tough to run on Michigan. So I don't think Washington's going to run for 100. Can they run for 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus? Hopefully. But if they can't, they're going to have to rely heavily on Michael Penix getting the ball out quickly. That's the thing. They killed Texas with a lot of short and intermediate passes. I think they can do the same to Michigan. The problem that is if they become one-dimensional, Michigan's going to be able to pin their ears back and get after Michael Penix. He's going to be in harm's way a lot more than Jalen Milroe was. But I think Washington's offensive line is going to be able to pick it up enough. He's only been sacked 10 times this year. Are you telling me Michigan's going to sack him 4 or 5 times? No, they're not. And if they do, it'll be an all-time legendary performance by their defensive line. But I think Washington, especially with their receivers, Odunze, Polk, McMillan has been healthy lately. He missed a lot of time in the middle of the season. With those 3 guys, with Westover the tight end, yeah, I just think they're too difficult to stop. I know Michigan has Will Johnson. I know they have Mike Sanders still. Okay, let's say they got Johnson on Odunze. Let's say you got Sanders still on Polk. You're just going to leave a CB3 on McMillan. Good luck. He's going to get torched all game long. Washington has too many weapons offensively in the passing game. And if you can't get after Michael Penix, it's over. And I just think it's going to be over. I think Washington's going to win this game 34-27 or something like that. 34-24. I just don't think Michigan has it in them to win a shootout. And the question is, can you make this not a shootout? Can you limit Washington's offense? Well, Oregon had 2 shots at it. They couldn't. Texas had a shot. They couldn't. What makes Michigan any different? Washington's played 3 top 10 teams. None of them could do it. I just think Washington's too good. I think they're too sound offensively. I don't see Michigan having any shot to slow them down. That's just what I think. So Washington 34-27 is my final prediction. And I think my Huskies, right? Because I don't have a favorite team, but I'm rooting heavily for Washington. I have been all season. I want them to win, man. It would be so great to see them win. That's what I think, man. That's my prediction. This is a longer video. I was hoping it wasn't gonna be as long a video, but I kind of got to ranting a little bit, and you know how I am. But leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Comment what you think. What are your predictions? What were your thoughts on the semifinal games? Who do you think's gonna win, Washington or Michigan? I'm interested to see. So let me know, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
It's out the motherfucking pack. Right out. But niggas don't know how to act.